We're towards the bottom, on the bottom of Peidal Lamed Beis, the last line, Amar Rav Yudah Mashmuel. So the Gemara here is talking about, the Indian started in the Mishnah on Daf Pei Gimel Lamed Beis, when you have two chatzeres that are near each other, and then there's a third area, and that third area could be used by both of them. If it could be used by both of them, and these two chatzeres did not make an Erev chatzeres together, so because this third area could be used by both of them, so it's also for both of them to use this place. They never made an Erev chatzeres together. In other words, any joint, any area used jointly cannot be used by either one of these two chatzeres. We had the example in the Mishnah when you have a amud, you have, for example, a chotzer, then you have the people of the top floor, the people of the bottom floor, and they made an Erev chatzeres separately. And then you have an amud that could be used by both of them. So that amud, because it can be used by both of them, it's a joint area, they can't use it on Shabbos together. They can't use it at all on Shabbos. But if you have an area which could only be used by one of them more and by one of them less, the Gemara calls it lezeh b'nachas, lezeh b'kosha. One has easier access and one has lesser access. So then the one that has easier access, we consider it to be an extension of their reshus, or it's not a mamish an extension, but because you can use it that area easier, so therefore it's shaykh to that reshus, and not to the reshus that can use it more difficultly, not so conveniently. Okay, so here the Gemara is going to discuss another scenario behemshach to this basis of the whole sugya here. Bottom of Pedal Lamed Beis. Amar Rav Yudah Mashmuel boir shebein shtei chatzeres. You have a pit that's positioned between two chatzeres. So you have two chatzeres that are on two different sides of a mavoi. And in the middle, in this mavoi, you have a pit that has water in it. They get water from it. Take a look and picture Tov Pei Tes. Okay, the case over here is, Rashi explains, these two chatzeres that are on both sides of the mavoi do not have a door opened to this mavoi. It's not what we're talking about. If they have a door open to this mavoi, the halacha would be different. There's a wall that separates from the mavoi. There's a window that opens up into this mavoi, and then there's a pit of water over there. So the question is, this pit of water, both people of both chatzeres use it equally. Right? They use this pit of water equally. The thing is, however, they don't walk out there directly. They can use it by throwing out their pail into the air, and then it lands into this pit, and that's how they can use it to draw water from it. Okay, so even though they both use it, but what we're going to discuss over here in the Gemara is, when you have a usage in one place, a joint usage that comes through the avir, through the air. It's not mamish direct. It's not close enough to either of them to be able to use it directly. It's in the middle. It's removed from the wall for tvachim. And therefore, they could only use it through throwing it into the air. So the question is, does that aser either one of them of using it? So the Gemara says, Bar shebein. Yes, there's a mechitza. Yes, they can't walk out. They're not walking out to this bar. There's a mechitza there. Bar shebein shtei chatzeres mufleges mekaisel zar ba mekaisel zar ba. So this bar that's there in the middle, so it's removed from one wall 4 tvachim. It's removed from the other wall 4 tvachim. So in order for each one of them to use it, they have to go through that airspace of 4 tvachim. So are they allowed to use it together on Shabbos? So Rav Yudah Mashmuel says, Zeh moitzi ziz kol shehu umemala. So one person has to stick out a ziz, a ledge, that's a kol shehu, and then he can fill up from there. V'zeh moitzi ziz kol shehu umemala, and the other one has to stick out a ledge, a kol shehu, and then he can fill up from it. So Rashi explains, and we'll see this later in the Gemara, that really in such a case, because neither of them has direct access to it, you only could access it with a break of that avir, that space of 4 tvachim in between. They don't ask it on each other. Minadin, they shouldn't ask it on each other. The only time you ask it on each other when they have a joint access to a place without any avir in between. Here, because of the avir, they don't ask it on each other. Elamai, nevertheless, Chachamim will geyser that you should make a heker. Put out that ziz to make a heker, because if people are going to see that there's a joint area that they're using on Shabbos without making an Erev chatzeres, you might come and make a mistake and say that the same thing is true with any joint area that you're allowed to use on a Shabbos. And really there's a difference. Reason you're allowed to use it over here is because there's avir, there's airspace in between. They're not using it directly. But in order to not make this confusion, you make this heker, and people will ask, what's this ziz doing here? And it'll remind them that, the ziz is here because really there's a problem when you have a joint use. That's the pshat. That's what Rashi explains there. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Rav Yudah didei Amar. Rav Yudah says you don't have to have a ledge sticking out. Afil kanya, even if you have a reed, any mashu mamish, not even a ledge, even a kanya, you put out a reed as a heker, that's good enough. So Amalei Abai Rav Yosef. Abai said to Rav Yosef, Hod Rav Yehuda the Shmuel. Rav Yehuda, what he said that you could put even a little reed, that was also in the name of Shmuel. He said this from Shmuel. So Rashi says that we just had Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel that you have to put out a ledge, and then Rav Yehuda himself said that you could put out even a reed. So the Havaman of the Gemara is Abaye didn't hear the first statement of Rav Yehuda. If he would have heard the first statement of Rav Yehuda, then he wouldn't be saying Had Rav Yehuda the Shmuel. He quoted from Shmuel something else, and now he himself is saying only a kanya, only a reed. Abaye didn't hear. This is what the Gemara L'Chatchila thought. Abaye didn't hear the first statement. So he said that what Rav Yehuda said is in the name of Shmuel. Amalei Abaye Rav Yosef. So Abaye says to Rav Yosef. No, I'm sorry. I just read this. Okay. So Rav the Shmuel here. It's Rav. This is a Shmuel. The Id Rav, because if Rav Yehuda said this in the name of Rav, so Rashi says Rav Yehuda had two teachers. You have in the Gemara all the time. There's Rav Yehuda Amar Rav and Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So if it's not Rav Yehuda himself, who did he hear it from? He heard it from his teacher. So he says he heard it from Shmuel and not from Rav. Because if he heard it from Rav, Rav said, when you have joint use, joint access of one place, it doesn't answer that they have this joint access if there's a space of ear that's separating. They don't have direct access. So Rav holds that in this case of this boir, that there's space of 4 tfachim in between each chotzer wouldn't be a problem. B'chlal, they can use it directly without making any heker. Or the Shmuel meheche. So again, Abaye did not hear the first part of the statement that Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel. So the Gemara is asking, and where did Shmuel say that even if there's a joint access with the break of avir in between, it's still a problem? Is it from this case that we learned yesterday? When you have a rooftop that's open to a Rishus Harabim, tzarich sulam kavua la tiray. So you have a rooftop that's open to a Rishus Harabim, and that rooftop also has a porch that it has access to. Okay, you have it in the picture. We had this yesterday. This is in picture Tov Pevov, where you have a rooftop, and you also have a porch. So the rooftop to the porch, you want to be able to carry from the rooftop to the porch. The thing is, though, the people of the Rishus Harabim have a certain access to the rooftop. Okay, this picture, it's not the greatest picture. You may not be able to see this, but this rooftop is low. It's high. It's 10 tvachim high, but it's low enough for the people of the Rishus Harabim to have an access to it. So, because they have an access to it, and it's open, see, there's no fence around this rooftop, it's open, so therefore, it would aser the people of the rooftop to carry down into this mirpesas, this porch. This porch is within 10 tvachim to the Rishus Harabim. The rooftop itself is higher than 10 tvachim of the Rishus Harabim. But the mirpesas is within 10 tvachim of the Rishus Harabim. So this porch is within 10 tvachim of the Rishus Harabim, and it's also within 10 tvachim to the rooftop. So therefore this porch spoils the separation of the rooftop from the Rishus Harabim. Even though the rooftop itself is 10 tvachim removed from the Rishus Harabim, but because there's a porch there in between, so therefore there's an easy access from the Rishus Harabim to the porch to the rooftop. So in such a case, the people of the rooftop cannot use the porch without making a certain designation that the rooftop is not for use for the people of the Rishus Harabim. How do you do that? Tzarech sulam kavua lahatira. You have to put a ladder there to separate the rooftop and the porch from the Rishus Harabim, that it should be clear by putting the ladder there that this rooftop and porch are not made for the use of the Rishus Harabim. The people of this that are living in this house want to use it for themselves. That's what he said. So Rashi explains, what's the connection to what we're talking about over here? The people of the Rishus Harabim, what kind of access do they have to this roof? So you don't have it here in this picture. B'chlal, this picture is not such a good picture. The people of the Rishus Harabim, there's usually, at this point, the Gemara is thinking, usually in every Rishus Harabim, we learned about this once before in the Gemara in Shabbos, between a Rishus Harabim and a house, the house is not built all the way to the street. there's usually some break in between of some amudim or something to not allow the people to walk all the way up to the wall of the house. So if the people of the Rishus Harabim would have any use of this rooftop, even though the rooftop is open and it's pretty low, that the people of the Rishus Harabim could use it, but there's a break of 4 tvachim in between. There is a certain break there. And nevertheless, we're concerned about the fact that the rooftop is open to the Rishus Harabim and the people of the Rishus Harabim could use it. And therefore you wouldn't be allowed to carry from that rooftop to the porch. So what do we see? That even though there's a use of the people of the Rishus Harabim with a break of air space, nevertheless, it creates a problem. So over here we see that Shmuel held that even though there's an access with a break of avir, it's still an issue. So the Gemara says, no, that case is not a raya, that this is what Shmuel holds. Why? Dilme kid Rav Papa. Maybe in that case, we learned this yesterday, the Gemara says, Rav Papa said, maybe it's talking about a case that the people of the Rishus Harabim have an easy, direct access to this rooftop. The rooftop is so low and it's so accessible that people could put their hats there, their packages there, they put things down there directly without any airspace in between. So that's not a raya to what we're talking about over here. Elo, the raya that this is what Shmuel holds is, so now the Gemara changes. Now the Gemara says, Meha. This statement that Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel. So as I said, the Gemara before thought that Abaye did not hear the first statement that Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel. He only heard the second statement that Rav Yehuda said on his own. Now the Gemara says, no. Abaye knew that Rav Yehuda first said in the name of Shmuel that you have to put out a ziz. And then Rav Yehuda himself was mekel, and Rav Yehuda said, you don't even need a ziz, you just need a kana. It's this itself. He heard the first statement as well. Elamiha, this first statement that Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, Zeh moitzi ziz kol shum memala, v'zeh moitzi ziz kol shum memala. That you have to put out a ziz there in order to be able to fill from this pit. Taime, even though there's a break of airspace. Taime, the apik, only because you're making this heker, you're putting out this ledge, therefore you can draw from the water of the well. Haloi apik, but if not, amrina nadam ma'isal chavere, derech haver. Shmuel says that you aser on your friend because there's a joint use over here. So what was the point that Abaye was trying to say here? When Abaye said, that Rav Yehuda the Shmuel, what was he trying to say? So Rashi explains what Abaye was trying to say is, when you learn the Gemara before Bepashtus, it looks like there's a machlokes between Shmuel and Rav Yehuda. Shmuel says you have to dafka put out a ziz, it has to be a proper ledge, even though he says kolshu, but it has to be a proper ledge. And Rav Yehuda says, no, you can push it out of a reed, nothing, a kanya. Comes Abaye and says, it's not a machlokes. Rav Yehuda is explaining what Shmuel said. When Shmuel said ziz kol shuhu, because he said ziz kol shuhu, he didn't mean that it has to even be a ledge. It could even be a kanya. He was explaining Shmuel. He wasn't arguing with Shmuel. That's what Abaye meant to say. Ha, the Rav Yehuda the Shmueli. He's coming to explain what Shmuel said, not to argue on him. Sagt the Gemara weiter. Now Rav argues on this. Rav says when you have joint access to a place, and there's airspace in between the people that have access, it's that they don't aser on each other because they don't have direct access. Where did Rav say this? Rav mehecha. From where do we have a raya that Rav says this? Is it from this case? And this is the case that we learned about yesterday. You have two porches that are near each other, and one is higher than the other, and there's a mechitza that was created. What kind of mechitza are we talking about over here? Not a mechitza that surrounds the porch, but a mechitza that's created in a hole in the porch. Why are they making a hole in the porch? Because there's water on the bottom, and they want to be able to draw water. So they make a mechitza hanging down under the porch to be able to draw water. We learned this case yesterday, and this is in picture Tov Pei Beis. That's the basic case. The Gemara had other details about this, but picture Tov Pei Beis is the shteig, zusteroi, zula maila mizu, and there's a mechitza that's made in the top porch to be able to draw the water, and not in the bottom porch. Okay, so what this is a Mishnah, and what does it say in this Mishnah? Shteyen asurais ad arvu. Both of these porches are going to be aser to use this hole with the has a mechitza to be able to draw water until they make an eidav together. Why? Because both of these porches have access to use this hole to draw the water. The person that's in the porch that made this hole is using it. Look in picture Tov Pei Beis. And the person on the bottom also throws up his pail the zrike, he throws up his pail through that hole to be able to use the water. So because you have a joint access in using this, a joint use in using this hole to draw the water, if they don't make an Erev Chatzeris together, they can't use it. That's what it said in the Mishnah. Now, what did Rav say about this? Said Ravuna Marav, when is it a problem that you have another porch right next to your porch, and therefore there's a joint use? That's only if the other porch is near your porch, even though it's lower down, but it has to be near. If it's removed 4 tfachim, el yaina muteres, the porch that has the hole in it, and the top porch, he has the hole in it, and he has a direct access, is going to be mutter. V'tachtaina asura, and the bottom porch, which is removed from it, is going to be asa to use it. So what do we see over here? That as long as the porch from the bottom, even though l'chayre he also has access, he throws up his pail to get the water through that hole, but nevertheless, this avir. If he's removed 4 tvachim, so now his access is with a break of avir, his access doesn't matter anymore. So therefore they don't need a native chatzeris. So I see Rav's shitta here, that anyone that has access with a break of avir doesn't matter. Says the Gemara, no, this case is not a raya. Because over there, we're not talking about 2 people that have equal access. Dilme, shani hacha, this case is different. The kivin de lezeb is rike v'shilshol. The person from the bottom porch, how does he have access to this hole to draw water? He has to throw up his pail, and he has to lower it down into the mechitza to be able to draw the water. Zrika and shilshol. So he doesn't have such easy access. Ulezeh, and the person that's in the porch that has the hole in it, b'shilshol l'chadei. He just has to lower down his pail. He doesn't have to throw it. So they l'chatchila don't have equal access to this. So therefore I say, kilezeh b'zrike, ulezeh b'pesach dami. So this is a case where one person has direct access. That's what the word pesach means. He has a direct access, and the other person has a more difficult, a more indirect access, and therefore they're not equal access. And therefore I say that the person in the porch that's removed 4 tfachim doesn't aser on him. So in other words, what the Gemara is saying is, in a case where 2 chatzeris have equal access, lav dafke, the fact that there's a separation of airspace would matter. Over here, the fact that there's a separation of airspace matters. It's because it's a case where the person on the top porch has an easier access than the person on the bottom porch. So there's no raya from this case. Hello. So the Gemara, the raya is Mihad Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rav Baravu Amar Rav. The raya is from a different scenario that was said in the name of Rav. Shnei batim, you have 2 houses. V'shalosh churvais beinayim, and you have 3 broken down houses that have openings in the walls, and the 3 broken down houses that are between them. Look in the picture. 2 houses and 3 broken down houses. This is going to be picture Tov Tzadik Aleph. See it? Okay, so you have these 3. I mean, like you have remnants of houses over there. 3 broken down houses in between 2 houses. Okay, so what's the halacha? Question is, the 2 houses on both sides, are they allowed to have access and use? Are they allowed to use the area of the broken down house that's near them? The 2 chorvas, yeah. Shalosh chorvas b'neiim. Zeh mishtamesh b'samoch shaloi, or b'samoch loi, another gersa. So one house could use to the house that's the broken, the chorva that's closer to him. Al yedei zrike. He can, from his window, he could throw down something into that house that's closer to him. V'zeh b'shtamesh b'samoch loi. And the other one could also use the house that's closer to him. Al yedei zrike. Through throwing down something to that house. Now, what so? Huh?
There's no door to go to.
No door, a window, only a window. He has the opening of a window to go in there. Okay, so each house is allowed to use that churva that's near him. So now let's go back to the Indian over here. Anytime you have an area that there's a joint use, it asks on both of them to use it if they didn't make an Erev Chatzeris together. So each churva that's near your house, theoretically, the person from the other side could also use it, because these are broken down houses and there's an opening in the wall. Just like you could use the house that's near you, the other guy could throw something and use that area as well. Elamai, what's the difference? You have direct access. The guy on the other side, if he wants to use that broken down house that's near you, he has to throw it through the avir, through the airspace, and then it'll reach all the way to you. So you have a use without avir in between. The other guy has a use with avir in between. So therefore you have direct access. So therefore it's not considered to be joint use. So you can use the house near yourself. He can use the house near him.
It's only three zirka?
Huh?
Only three zirka, are you allowed to use this?
No. The lashon of zriki here is not, no, avdafka. It's just there's no door. You can't walk out. There's a window, so you have to throw something out.
What if
So,
there is a door?
huh?
And if there is a door, then
If there's a door, because if there's a door, then the other person could walk out directly. Then he has more direct access. It's like opening into a chutzner, yeah.
You can't climb out the window.
It's a window, yeah, no. So it's just a window, so you can only al yedei zrike. Yeah, but there's a difference between the zrike that you could do to the churva that's near you, and the other guy that has to throw it through to reach over to your side. So here we see that a hishtamshus through avir, if it has to go through airspace, is not called a joint use, and he doesn't ask it on you.
The wind is too high from the floor.
Huh?
The wind is too high from the floor to walk out.
Yeah.
Sagt
the Gemara, v'hoem tzoi aser. Now the conclusion of the statement of Rav was, we were talking over here about three chorvas. The middle chorva is going to be aser. Okay, so why would the middle one be aser? The middle one, none of them have direct access to. The middle chorva, each one of them has to throw through the chorva that's near them, so why would it be aser? The Gemara is going to explain this now. Sagt the Gemara, Yosef Rav Brunne v'ka'amar la shmaite. Rav Brunne said over this halacha in the name of Rav. Amalei Rabbi Eliezer, so Rabbi Eliezer said, or he's supposed to be good as Rabbi Lozer. Rabbi Lozer said, Rabbi Lozer bar Beirav, Talmud of Rav, he said, Amar Rav Hachi, did Rav say this, that the middle one would be Aser? Amalei in, he said, yeah, that's what Rav said. So he said, Achveli ushpize, show me where Rav is living now, where is he staying? I want to go talk to him about this. Achveli, he showed him. We had something similar to this, like this before, Rabbi Lozer. He was very persistent, and before, I think then it was Shmuel. He wanted to go speak to Shmuel about a certain halacha, he said. So he said, Rav. He came to Rav. Amalei, Amar Hachi, did you say this halacha? Amalei in. He told him, yes, I said this halacha. So he had a problem with this. Amalei. So he asked him the question, V'hamar hu the Amar, aren't you the one that said, Lezeh b'shilshul, or Lezeh b'zrike, shnei and asure. In a case that one person has access through lowering down to that area, another person has access through throwing up. They're both going to be yasser. It's considered to be an area which is joint use. What's the pshat in the question that Rabbi Lazar was asking Rav? So Rashi explains, Rabbi Lazar's question was based on the amtsoi aser. If Rav says amtsoi aser, what does that mean? How do these two people on both sides have joint use in this middle chorva? Only through avir. Each one has to throw through that chorva that's near them, and they reach to the middle one. So if Rav is saying that the joint use of the middle chorva is going to be asr, even though there's airspace in between that they have to throw through, that means that Rav doesn't care about the break of airspace. Right? Until here we were saying, Adarabah, Rav holds because there's a break of airspace, that's not considered to be joint use. But if the middle one is asr because of their joint use, that means that the break of the airspace doesn't matter. If so, asks Rabbi Lazar, if the break of the airspace is a non-issue, so even the chorva that's near each one of them should be asr, because there's a joint use. How is there a joint use? The chorva that's near one side. So for that person on that side, how does he use that chorva? He can just lower down something from his window into that place. And the person on the other side has to throw it over. So Rav already said before, a place where you have a joint use, even though it's not mamish an equal joint use, but they do have a joint use. One person by lowering down from his window, and another person by throwing it to that area, it's considered to be a joint use. And l'chayre, Rav holds that the airspace in between is irrelevant. So if that airspace in between is irrelevant, it should be considered to be a joint use. So why did Rav say that each one could use the churva on his side? So Rav explained to him, you didn't understand the pashat the mitzias of the case. Amalei mi savres the kaimi kishura. Do you think I'm talking about a case where you have three churves in between the house in a straight row? Loi, the kaimi kichatzuva. They're in the shape of chatzuva. Chatzuva is like a segel. You have two houses, and you have it right over here in the picture in the Gemara. And then a third one beside them that has direct access to both houses without throwing anywhere. You see a more clear 3D picture here in picture Tov Tzadik Beis. Right, so you have the two churves that are open, direct access to each house, and then you have the third one You have the third one, which is open to both of them directly. So what Rav is saying that the third one is aser is because that third one is open to both, joint use directly to both of them. Pashut. It's actually the question is what's even the chiddush of this? It's so pashut that they're both aser. They both have a direct joint access to this third one that's in between. Yeah, that's the emtsois. The emtsois is not in between them. The emtsois is like a segel. It's a besides these two and has direct access to both of the houses. Huh? It's not in between, it's beside them. Huh?
It's not between the chorvus, it's between the bottom.
Okay, between the bottom. Emtsoi, he's calling it emtsoi.
You would want to use more the two smaller ones because it's more private for their
No, it could be, but if this one is mamish a joint use. So over here they both have a direct joint use in it, so it's going to be asa unless they make an Erev Chatzeris. Amal Rav Papa Rav, so Rav Papa says to Rav, so now we're going back to Shmuel's opinion. What did Shmuel say? That anytime you have use in an area and there's a break of avir, even though you don't have direct access, but you have a use of something, but with ear space in between, that creates a problem. A joint use with ear is a problem. So he says, if so, Leime, Shmuel, Lesley, Rav Dimi, does Shmuel does he not hold of this statement of Rav Dimi, which we had a few times? When you have a little platform, a little pole that is between a Rishus HaYachid and a Rishus HaRabim, and this place does not have a surface of Daled al Daled. Mutter levnei Rishus HaRabim or levnei Rishus HaYachid lekatif olav. The people of the Rishus HaRabim and the people of the Rishus HaYachid could both use this area together. They could have a joint use out of this area. Ubulvat shelo yachlifu hasam rishuy. Sorry again. Ubulvat shelo yachlifu. Means the people of the Rishus HaRabim are not allowed to place their packages on this area and then from there bring it over to the Rishus HaYachid. People of the Rishus HaRabim can use it and people of the Rishus HaYachid can use it, but not to be machlef, not to bring it over from there to the other Rishus. Yeah, we had this a few times. You have the picture of this in Tov Tzadik Gimel. An area that's used jointly together. So what's the connection to our Gemara? So Rashi says the connection is that an area that does not have a surface of Daled al Daled is not a Hanocha. It's not considered to be an Hanocha B'chlal. We had this a few times in Masechta Shabbos. And therefore, people that are using this, it's like they're using the airspace of this area. It's not called to be a solid space that you're putting it down. So you have a joint use of this area, but what kind of joint use? You're really just using avir, airspace. And what does it say over here? That they're allowed to use it together. But according to Shmuel, anytime you have a joint use in the area, even though it's through avir, it's through the airspace, nevertheless, that's an airspace that Chachamim were geyser and they aser that you shouldn't use it. So over here, Rab Dimi Amar Rab Yechanan said, a joint use of this area, the airspace of this area, they're not allowed to use. Answers the Gemara, it's not the same thing. Hasam Rishuyes Dairaisa. Over there we're talking about this having a joint use of an area between a Rishus HaYachid and a Rishus HaRabim that are both a Rishus Midairaisa, and therefore a person will remember that this is Asam Midairaisa. We're not geyser, we're not afraid that he's going to come to carry over to the other Rishus. Hacha Rishuyes Derabanan. Over here, we're talking about a chatzar on one side, a chatzar on another side, and then a joint area in between. So over here, the two chatzeris on both sides, what's the issa to carry from one chatzar to another? It's the issa mid'Rabbanan. Here there's a gzeira mid'Rabbanan. When you have a joint use in the area, even with not direct access, even with just the use of avir, Chachamim made a gzeira even more than by a issa minatayra. Now going back to what Rav said. Miyam Rav Hachi. Did Rav say that if there's a use of avir, a use to a place through airspace, that's not an issue? But for Itmer, we learned Rav said, we also had this before in Shabbos, Shnei Batim Mishnei Tzidir Rishus HaRabim. You have two houses, let's say two porches, two Rishus HaYachids on two sides of the Rishus HaRabim. Asa Lizraik Mizeh Lizeh. You're not allowed to throw over from one Rishus HaYachid to another Rishus HaYachid with the space of the Rishus HaRabim in between. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, Mutter Lizraik Mizeh Lizeh. You're allowed to throw over from one Rishus HaYachid to another. You're going through the Rishus HaRabim in the airspace of the Rishus HaRabim above 10 Tvachim of the Rishus HaRabim. So what do we see over here? That Rav holds that the airspace of the Rishus HaRabim creates a break in between them, and it's going to be Aser. So we see that the usage through the airspace does matter. So how could we say that Rav holds that usage through the airspace does not matter? Amalei, so the Gemara says there it's for a completely different reason. Nothing to do with the airspace of the Rosh Hashanah above 10 Tvachim. Lav Mia Kimna, didn't we explain over there, what is it talking about? The mid lichad u'mitzichad. These two porches that are across each other, one is higher up and one is lower down. And Zimnin, what we're afraid is, Zimnin the Megandiv and Nafal, if you're going to be allowed to throw from one Rosh Hashanah to another Rosh Hashanah with the Rosh Hashanah in between, so your aim might not be good, you might not reach the other Rishus, and it's going to roll down into the Rishus Harabim, and then you might go down and pick it up and bring it up. So it's a gzeira. Do we have a picture for this? There's no picture for this. Okay. So there's a gzeira that a person might pick it up from the ground and it's not going to land in the right place. That's why we were guys. Nothing to do with the airspace. It's a gzeira midrabanan.
It's not a gzeira that it might fall.
No, correct. The gzeira is that because that itself is not shalei b'chavana. That's not he wanted to throw it into another Rosh Hashanah. But if he's going to go down and pick it up, then he's b'chavana being machnis from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. That's what they were being geyser for.
It's interesting klal to say that we don't make a
Yeah, you don't make a gzeira for something that might happen shalei b'chavana. You make a gzeira for isam and that he might go and pick it up. You don't make a gzeira for something which is he did shalei b'chavana, which is no issa b'chlal, shalei miskaven. Sagt the Mishnah, we're going back now to Erev Chatzeres. Hanaysen es Eiruvin bebeis shar. A person places the food of the Erev Chatzeres in a beis shar. Beis shar is an area that's to pass through, made to pass through to get into the house, or an achsadra, a place which has a roof over it, but it's an open area. Like in front of a house, sometimes you have this overhang and it's an open area, but that's called an achsadra. Merpeses, or a porch. If that's where you place your Erev, ein Erev. An Erev has to be placed in a house, in a proper house where people are living inside. V'hadarsham, the same thing is also a person that lives in such an area, in a chotzer. You have a lot of people living in a chotzer, and you have one person that's living over there in this chotzer, in this kind of a place, whether a beis shar, a chsadra, a merpeses, ein oisa olav. He doesn't ask on the other people there. Only someone that lives in a regular house that's made for a person to live there, that's what asks on everything else. Beis teven, a storage for teven, for straw. Beis bakar, a place for the animals. Beis eitzim, a storage for wood. Beis eitzris, whatever, other kind of storage. Over there, that's a proper enclosure that could be used as a proper house. Hareze eruv, if you place the food there, it's going to be a good eruv. V'hadarsham, if you're living there, you are going to ask it on other people. Rabbi Yehuda says, Im yesham tfisis yad shel balabayis. Anytime you have a person living in a house in a chotzer, and the balabayis still has rights in this house. So let's say, for example, you rent out to somebody this house, but the balabayis has certain things, certain of his objects in your house. He has certain rights in your house. Balabayis eina isa. So again, yesham tfisis yad shel balabayis eina isa. So this person that's renting there is not going to answer on anybody else. So this is very negaya today when you have a person that's renting an apartment, but the balabais has his fridge there, his oven there, and therefore he has a tfisis yad. He has his object in your house, so therefore you don't have to make an Erev Chatzeres. He doesn't ask on anybody else because there's one owner and he has something in your house. In your apartment, talking about in your apartment. He's renting out your apartment.
Right.
So that's
People rent out the
the basement
The
and
room is
so also that's tfisis yad. This is the halacha, yeah.
could be a derech, that could be just a derech to your.
Okay, maybe. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Rav Yehuda bereider Rav Shmuel bashilis kol makayim she'amru. And everywhere where we say that hadar sham eina oiser, that if you're living in such a kind of place, you don't ask on anybody else, it's not a proper dwelling. Hanoisen es Eiruvin, if you place the eruv there, eina eruv. It's also not a proper place to put the eruv. Chutz is one exception. Beis shar de yachid, an area that's made as an entrance, a passage, but it's for an individual. So over there, it's a private area that's made as a passageway for an individual. So in such an area, you're not allowed to put your eruv there. It's not going to work. But if you live there, if one person lives there privately, he is going to ask on everybody else because saf it has a privacy there. Any place where we say that it's not a proper house and you can't put your eruv there, manichim by shituf. The shituf, the partnership that you create for a mavoi, that it could be placed outdoors. Chutz me'aver mavoi. The shituf cannot be placed in the mavoi itself. It has to be placed at least in the chutzner somewhere. So Rashi explains, we had this a few times, but here's this Rashi that explains the difference between an Eruv and a Shittuf. You can look into Rashi in the fourth wide line. So Rashi there explains, when it comes to an Eruv Chatzeris, it has to be dafke in a dira. The whole idea is that all the people participating in the Eruv Chatzeris live in the same house. And therefore the houses are not privately owned and the chutzah are jointly owned. They all live together also in one house. So it has to be placed in a house, that they're all living there. By the mavoi, the idea is that I'm joining all the chatzeros together with this mavoi. So you don't have to place it in a house. The chatzeros are joining together. Elamai, it has to be placed in a safe area, a mokim ha-mishtamer. So you can't just put it out in the mavoi somewhere. It's going to get lost. It has to be in a safe area. That's why it can't be in the avid of the mavoi. So the Gemara, Maika Mashmalon, what's the chiddush of the statement? Tanina, can't we see this clearly from what we said in the Mishnah? It's not going to be an Eruv. So we can be medayik from the Mishnah, Eruv hu de loy have. In these areas, it's not a proper house. It's not going to be an Eruv. Hashituf have, but for the shituf mavais, it is good. And says the Gemara, from this whole statement, the chiddush was two details. Beis shar de yachid, the case of a beis shar de yachid, if a person is living there, it does become a private dwelling that he's going to asar on others. That was one chiddush. And va'avir de mavoi itzrichele. And also to tell you that you can't put it in the open area outside in the mavi. It's not mishtamer. That was his chiddush. The loitnan, that you don't have a diak from the Mishnah. Tanya nami hachi, we could see this from a braise. It says, Hanoisn seiruve bebeis shar, achsadre, peses, chotzer, b'mavoi. You put your Eruv in any of these areas, hareze Eruv. It's a good Eruv. So the obvious question here is, but v'hatnan ein ze Eruv. You put it in any of these areas, it's not a good Eruv. Ela eime hareze shituf. If you put it in any of these areas, it's good for the shituf mavais. Frekta Gemara, but it also mentioned mavoi. Shituf b'mavoi lemintar. Are you allowed to leave the food for your shituf inside the mavi itself? It's not protected there. Eime b'chatzah b'mavi. The Braisa meant that you put it in a chatzah in the mavi and then it's guarded. Rav Yudah Mashmuel says the same thing basically. We had this before. B'nei chabura shoyim misubin. People of a group of people were eating together on Friday afternoon, and the kiddush alei and ayom, and Shabbos comes in while they're eating together. Pas shal shulchan seimchen aleha. It's going to be the kfiyas this year. Erev Purim shechaliz b'Shabbos. So they were having their suda on Purim, and Shabbos comes in. So if they have a table, they have bread that they're eating together jointly on this table. Seimchen aleha mishameirov. So now they don't have to make an Eruv Chatzeris. They're all sharing the same bread on this table. They're eating together when Shabbos comes in. Others say Mishum Shittuf. They join together for the Shittuf of the Mavi, that they can use the bread. So Rabbi says about this statement of Shmuel, V'loi pligi, there's no machlokes. Kam b'mesubim b'bayis, if they were eating indoors in a house, so then that food that they're using together could be used for an Eruv Chatzeris. Kam b'mesubim b'chatzer, if they're joining together and they're eating outdoors in the chatzer, so then the food could be used for the shituf mavais. Amalei abayel Rabbe, Tanya the Messiah, I'll bring you a raya to what you said. Eruv v'chatzeris b'chatzer. The Eruv chatzeris you put in a chatzer. Shituf mavais b'mavi, and the shituf mavais you put in a mavi. Ve'havinam ba. When you ask the question on this braise, Eruv v'chatzeris b'chatzer. The food of the Eruv chatzeris you put in a chatzer. What nana neisnes Eruv beis shar achsadre merpesas in a mavi. If you put the food of if you put your food of the Eruv Chatzeris in one of these dwellings, it's not a proper house, it's not an Eruv, for sure you can't put it in the Chatzer. Eruv Chatzeris bebayis. The Braisa has to say that the Eruv Chatzeris has to be in the house. Bebayis shebachatzer, in the house of the Chatzer. And Shitufim Mavois has to be b'chatzer shebamavi, not in the Mavi itself, but in a Chatzer shebamavi where it's protected there.